All right, I'm pleased to be joined from Ryan from the Packers.net podcast. How's it going, Ryan?
Doing good, man. How you doing?
I am doing wonderful. Let's start off with it real quick. You know, you're a big Packers fan. Had some disappointing news the other day. Aaron Rodgers is wants out of Green Bay. How do you feel about that?
Still in the process of processing it because I mean, you knew that he wasn't super happy with the Jordan Love thing, but I guess I didn't realize it was this bad. I kind of figured it was the way that we all thought it was Rodgers is saying, "Hey, I want to be here. I want to retire here," and they're kind of pushing me out, and I'm not happy about that. And it's like, I can understand that, but they got to do what they got to do as far as preparing for the future. What we've learned, or at least, and it's hard to parse out what's real and what's not, but what we've learned is that the Packers are kind of almost borderline begging him to come back and like, look, we'll do pretty much whatever. And he's like, no, I'm done. Like, I want out. I don't want to come back anymore. There's nothing you can really do. Latest today, and again, I don't know if it's true, but the latest today is that he's saying, I'm not coming back as long as Gutekunst is the GM. And it's like, dude. So, I mean, it sounds like it's very unlikely he's coming back.
If he does get, if he doesn't return to the Packers, could you see him getting traded, or could you see him just retiring and maybe just doing Jeopardy full time if he gets the gig?
That's what's so hard to figure out is what's going through his head right now. It kind of, I mean, it's almost so ridiculous trying to figure out what would cause him to be this irate to the point where it's like, I feel like it's almost like an excuse. Like he wants to move on. I don't know if he wants to move on with his life outside of football or if he wants to move on to a new, I guess Shailene, his fiance has got family in Denver. He obviously has ties to California. I don't know if he's just trying to push his way down the line there, or maybe he does want to retire. I can tell you as a Packer fan, I'm terrified that he's going to retire because I'm looking at a league MVP. As much as I'd love for him to play for us, we could bring in a massive haul if we could trade him. And we're probably going to need that if we don't have him. And if he just retires, I mean, we'll get a little bit of a bump on as far as the money that we're going to have. But I mean, that's a big difference. We're talking, I mean, it's got to be a bare minimum of like 3 first-round picks that we're just losing because he's like, nah, forget this, and walks away. And that would be unbelievably painful.
Yeah, like I said, it's an interesting situation because I feel like when the new GM for the Packers came in, him and Rodgers like basically
Yeah.
butted heads right away, and it's really interesting. And then also, I saw that he was possibly interested in joining the Raiders, which wouldn't make any sense. They don't have much
Yeah.
over there, but I know John Gruden loves him, and I guess Gruden is a player's coach. Do you see a scenario where he lines up or winds up in Vegas?
The only thing I could think again is that they're very pliable. I think they've done a terrible job of drafting. Obviously, their GM defers to their coach in order to draft. Who knows? I mean, if they're just like, come on in here and we'll just do it together, whatever, where he feels like he can take a lot of control, maybe he'd be interested in that. Um, but yeah, like you said, I mean, the players there are not all that great. I mean, they did go out and try to stack up on wide receivers. They got a great running back. That's the only way I could really see that happen. I think a lot of it is control. And again, possibly this scenario where he just wants to bow out, which is the worst possible scenario.
Yeah, it's kind of a tough situation right now, and it'll be intriguing to see what happens.
Right.
Do you think do you think Jordan Love is the future?
So hard to say because especially with COVID last year, we got to see almost nothing. I mean, the few reports we got were not super positive. But at the same time, it was like they were just working on footwork. Like they had to rework his whole footwork and all that. I did like what I saw in college, especially in terms of his fit with that whole Shanahan, Matt LaFleur kind of a system. But it's so hard to tell as far as will he be ready. I think that's part of the reason why I like the idea of getting more picks for Aaron Rodgers, because what you get is sort of a 1-year trial with Jordan Love. If it works out, cool. We take those picks and we load up to help him out. If it doesn't work, we're going to get a high pick because he sucks. And then we're going to take that high pick plus those other picks and try to move up and just try to find the actual quarterback of the future.
If Rodgers isn't with the Packers week 1, or if he doesn't play at all next season, he's not with the Packers anymore. What do you think the Packers' record will be for this season?
Man, there are so many variables. I mean, I'll say it's less than what they've done in the past. It's not just the Packers too. I mean, the whole division is up in the air. I mean, we got to figure out what is Justin Fields for Chicago. Minnesota's kind of getting rebuilt. They might be kind of the head of that division. Detroit's kind of tear down and rebuild mode. I still feel confident enough in the team, depending on the continuity in the locker room. There's a lot of people worried that guys like Devontae and Bakhtiari are going to be mad if Rodgers leaves. They'll take a step back, but I'd say they're ahead of 8-8. Let's say a 9-win team. Just throw that out there. Or actually, wouldn't we got 17 games now, so we'll call it 10.
So, do you think Jordan Love, or actually, I'll give your opinion. Do you think Rodgers will be back with the Packers for Week 1 this season?
It's so crazy to say no, but I just don't see a path. I mean, things have gotten almost so toxic over the last couple of days. I mean, how do you even repair that? If the rumors are true that Rodgers said, there's two big rumors that are brutal. Number one is I'm not coming back as long as Gutekunst is there. And if they don't fix things to my liking, which those two things might be the exact same thing, but if they don't fix it to my liking, I'm not coming back. You come back from that. Even if you come to an agreement on a contract, it's like, dude, you're kind of a jerk, man. I don't think I want you here. So I'm unless something comes out where it's like a lot of this is made up and it's fake and it's not real, I'm kind of sitting at like 25% maybe that he plays Week 1.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, yeah, it doesn't seem like it's true, and it doesn't seem like he's going to want to come back to Green Bay. And I don't really see a scenario where he gets traded, because I feel like the Packers they don't want to trade him at all, and it's going to be a wild offseason, or at least a wild summer for Aaron Rodgers and the Packers. What did you think about the draft pick of Eric Stokes in the first round?
I think it's one of those things where it's exactly what you would expect, right? As soon as they did it, it's like, we should have seen that coming. It's considered a reach. They're about consistently grabbing a guy about a round later than expected. High RAS, high athleticism. They're obsessed with athleticism. The corners are going to be extremely thin starting next year. They've got like one guy under contract, so it's a future pick, which is a very Packers thing to do. And he's a high character guy, which they're absolutely obsessed with. So as soon as they make the pick, it's like that makes perfect sense. I think we're all mostly excited. We're kind of all done with Kevin King, but with Jair really emerging and Darnell Savage and Adrian Amos having a real good second half of the year and kind of really blowing up at the second half, the prospect of how good this DB group can be, especially at the speed. I mean, you got, not only is he fast, but Jair is blazing fast. Savage is blazing fast. I know speed is kind of an overrated quality, but when you got that many guys running 4.3s, that's kind of cool. So I'm excited about it.
Do you think the Packers should have drafted a playmaker on the offensive side in the first round instead of a defensive back?
Not really. I mean, I think that's kind of an overblown thing. I wouldn't have been opposed to it, but again, I mean, wide receiver and corner are the two that are the thinnest after this year. So I think those were kind of high priorities. But again, if you look at what are the actual priorities outside of what the media is talking about with Rodgers needing help, he doesn't need help. He's got the number one wide receiver in football. He's got the number one left tackle. He had the number one center, who's now gone, but still a good offensive line. He's got a great running back. He's got a great second running back. And then the other wide receivers are maybe like low-end number twos, but he's not suffering. I mean, it was the number one offense in football. The whole thing is kind of crazy. So, they got Amari Rodgers in the third. I do think it's a need. I think the Packers wanted to address it. I don't think it was their biggest need. I think you could argue corner was a much bigger need. And if they did it, it would have been fine. But no, I don't think they needed to force that. I think that whole narrative is it's wildly overblown.
Yeah, I saw this stat that it's kind of crazy how it works, but it said both, Brett Favre, Bart Starr, two legend quarterbacks that both play for the Packers. They played for 16 seasons and then either retired or went to another team. Do you think that's a concern for the Packers now that Rodgers has finished 16 years in Green Bay?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously we're all very concerned with what's going on right now. I really did not expect year 16 was going to be the end. I thought it would be kind of soon, I figured within a year or two. And that's kind of the crazy thing about this whole scenario is, I think Aaron Rodgers was right. I think the plan was, we got our new regime in here. Rodgers seems like he's declining a little bit. We're going to get a guy. We're going to groom him. We're going to push Rodgers out. The crazy thing is Rodgers won. He won MVP. Packers are like, oh, shoot, I guess we were wrong. I guess we shouldn't have drafted Love. Maybe, I don't know. And so now they're committed. Rodgers is the guy. He proved it. He won. And now he wants to force his way out. So, I thought we had another year or two. I thought maybe we'll see what happens this year, see if Rodgers regresses, see if Love has a good year. Maybe we'll push him out next year, whatever. But I guess 16 is a magic number because it looks like he's he won, and he's going to just throw it in their face and say, I won and now I'm out. I still can't wrap my head around what he's thinking, but it's something like that, I guess. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's disappointing for a lot of Packers fans. I know my brother and my dad are big Green Bay fans, and they were really disappointed when it happened. So, if the Packer, of course, if I'm just hypothetically saying, if Rodgers doesn't return to Green Bay, who do you think wins the division this season?
Again, that's real up in the air. I feel like the safest bet would be the Vikings. They were kind of neck and neck with the Packers a couple years ago. They lost a ton of guys last year, but they're getting Danielle Hunter back. I think they got a decent quarterback. They did a lot to build up their offensive line. They got a good running back, great pair of wide receivers. And again, that defense is, they need some help at corner, but they really built up that defensive line, the pass rushers and whatnot. So I think that would be the safest bet, would be the Vikings.
It seems like the Vikings, though, every year they have a good draft, and just like they can't really put it together. And I think
Right.
I don't know if that's Kirk Cousins, or I feel like the coaching staff is good. So I don't know. I mean, that's a pretty good estimate. I do like the Bears drafting Justin Fields, but I think it's really on Matt Nagy to see how good the Bears do, because I feel like if the Bears don't win a playoff game, Matt Nagy and Ryan Pace are gone. But how well do you think Justin Fields does in his first season with Chicago?
I mean, I like Justin Fields. I think the thing that frustrates me the most, and I mean, I like the picks. I like Justin Fields. They followed it up with what was it, Tevin Jenkins, I think. And it's a great pick. The problem is they traded up both times. They gave away all the rest of their picks. They gave away a ton of picks. They didn't pick until the fifth round. And they got another tackle, and they gave away picks for next year. And they've been giving away picks for years, which is why the team is eroding. It's constantly eroding. It's constantly getting worse, and they need those picks is the point. And so, look, they got a good quarterback, they got a good tackle, and that was important. But as guys are leaving, they don't have the tools to replace all these guys. So I'm skeptical about their ability, because I don't trust their GM to keep the fire stoked up. I think the team around Justin Fields is going to keep eroding. The offensive line is continuing to get worse. It's a very toxic place. They had a wide receiver that wanted to leave, and they've had other guys that have left and said, I'll play, but I'm not playing for the Bears. And I don't know why they brought Pace back, to be completely honest. I think they have a lot of potential, and they just keep ruining it, kind of similar to what you said about the Vikings. It always seems like there's something there, but there's just something wrong. They had the defense, but the offense wasn't there. And, the defense wasn't quite what it was last year. And, I think they got a decent window with a quarterback, a wide receiver, and a defense. But again, the things are just kind of going downhill. And if they don't hit soon, I think it's going to be kind of just done.
Let's go back to the Packers for a little bit. Matt LaFleur, if the Packers don't make the playoffs this season, I'm assuming the Packers will give him one more year, but do you think he's out after this season?
No, I think they've done it. I mean, they were a 6-win team under Mike McCarthy and Ted Thompson. I thought we were headed to a dark era. I really did. The drafting was going poorly. They were not hitting on a lot of picks. The team was kind of eroding, like I talked about with the Bears. The locker room was super toxic, which the Packers always had a good locker room, but it was getting real bad. They hired a new GM, and in 1 year, after hiring Matt LaFleur and all these guys, in 1 year, they turned it around, went to the NFC Championship game, went back to back. He's one of the winningest coaches in NFL history. And again, I think the GM is doing a great job. He's had tons of hits in free agency and in the draft. And they're still trying to, now they got a new defensive coordinator, so we still got to kind of balance this thing out. But I think they've done such a good job. They got a pretty long leash, I would say. And if things are a little rocky with a new quarterback, no, they're not going to boot him out. I mean, even if it's a brutal year, I think he's got several years of bad play before they talk about moving on from him.
And again, thanks for coming on, Ryan. This has been a great conversation. Before we wrap up the interview, the Packers the last 2 years have gone to the NFC Championship, which is amazing. Why do you think they came up short both years?
That's such a good question. And it's almost hard, because you wish it was something simple, like we don't have the talent, or we don't have a quarterback, or we don't have this. It's really hard when I genuinely think they were the best team in football at that time. You could argue one or two other teams, but there's nothing they're lacking. You got the offense, you got the quarterback, you got the defense, you got the coach, the scheme, every little thing that you can nitpick and say you need to win, they had it. But for the second year in a row, they just didn't show up. I mean, your key players like Zadarius Smith and Bakhtiari was out, but he was bad against San Francisco. And your offensive line, your wide receivers, your quarterback, they just didn't play. And I just don't understand what that takes. And I guess right now, being optimistic, my theory is the problem is Aaron Rodgers. So once he's gone, that problem goes away. But I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what it's going to take. It's the most frustrating thing when it just feels like your team doesn't care in the biggest games. That's what really kills you.
All right. Thanks for coming on, Ryan. But before we wrap up, do you want to tell us more about your podcast and how long you've been doing it? And, you're a big Packers fan, stuff like that.
For sure, man. So it's Packernet Podcast. I do a daily podcast. I've got, I think, 1,060 shows now. I've been doing it since 2017. I've also got the Pack Daddy NFL YouTube channel. You can check that out. I haven't been doing a ton on that recently, but I do like to get on there, do a lot of draft content. Otherwise, Pack_Daddy on social media if you want to check me out on Twitter or whatever. But yeah, if you're a Packer fan, please check out Packernet Podcast every single day, and I'll keep you up to date on what's going on.
All right. Thanks for coming on. And I'm assuming, Apple Podcasts and Spotify, you can get your podcast on.
Anywhere you find podcasts.
All right. That's great. Thanks for coming on, Ryan. And hope you have a wonderful night and good luck to the season.
Thanks a lot, man.
Thanks for listening to the Sports Town Podcast, or the STP Pod for short. If you want to check out more videos of the Sports Town Podcast, click on the left. If you want to subscribe to the channel, click on the right.